Section 3, correct integration of source material. In addition to documenting your sources correctly with a bibliography and in-text citations, another key to avoiding plagiarism and using your sources ethically is integrating the source material effectively. Integrating source material means that you combine it with your own voice in a way that is accurate, thorough, and stylistically effective. That is, your ideas and your source material flow smoothly together, all while avoiding plagiarism. Integrating source material effectively includes the following: quoting source material accurately and correctly, paraphrasing and summarization, source material accurately, thoroughly, and correctly, documenting all source material, including quotations, paraphrases, and summaries, providing transitions to source materials. It is essential to integrate your sources effectively regardless of what documentation style you are using: MLA, APA, Chicago style, etc. For the sake of consistency and simplicity, the examples in this section use MLA style. When a citation is necessary, see Section 2 of this tutorial for a discussion of documentation. How do you quote from sources correctly? Quoting simply means that you're using the exact words of a source. Important: before you quote from a source, keep in mind that you should be using quotations only for particularly important or well-expressed ideas in a source, or for technical information for which the exact wording is important. In other words, avoid overusing quotations. Point: don't rely too much on quotations in your introduction. A quotation might generate interest at the beginning of a paper or speech. However, most of your introduction should provide content and background information. Point: don't use a quotation in place of your own thesis statement. A thesis statement should be your own and in your own wording that sums up your overall point. Don't use a quotation as a topic sentence for an individual paragraph or point. As with a thesis statement, a topic sentence should sum up the paragraph or point in your own words. Point: don't end a paragraph or point with a quotation. It's usually better to wrap up final comment or summary sentence of your own that helps the transition into the next point. Point: don't rely too heavily on quotations in your conclusion. A quotation might help with a memorable ending, but conclusion should primarily reinforce your own thesis and main points. Too many quotations actually can lower your grade rather than make a project stronger. Quotations seem like an easy option, just copy and paste. However, using a few short quotations is more effective than allowing quotations to make up most of the paper or other project. If you quote too often or use multiple long quotations, your instructor will likely see the quotations as filler and conclude that you've taken the easy way out or didn't have enough ideas of your own. Now, on the positive side, you should use quotations when doing so helps inform and convince your reader or listeners. In a paper or speech, quotations are most commonly and frequently used in the body section to support topic sentences or main points. If it is appropriate to use a quotation, here are some keys to doing it effectively. Be accurate. Though misquoting someone technically isn't plagiarism, it is a serious and unethical misuse of a quotation and a misrepresentation of what a source actually said. Here are a few tips in making sure your quotations are accurate, especially in writing. When possible, copy and paste the quotation from an electronic source, but be sure to adjust the type size and the font to meet your paper's format requirements. For a quotation from a print source, or one that doesn't allow you to copy and paste carefully, compare your quotation to the original passage for accuracy. Check everything: wording, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, etc. If you leave any words out of a quotation, let your reader know by using ellipses. If you change part of the quotation, capitalization for example, or add something to a quotation to clarify its meaning or fit it more effectively into your writing, use some square brackets. Of course, you should never use ellipsis points or brackets to change the meaning of a quotation. Use quotation marks. It might seem obvious, but the only way a reader can know that you have used someone else's exact words in your own writing is if you surround them with quotation marks, which look like this. Plagiarism alert. Using a source's exact words in writing without using quotation marks is a form of plagiarism. Even if you provide documentation without the quotation marks, the reader assumes that the words from the source are your words and phrases. In other words, without quotation marks, you are taking credit for the actual writing of the source. That is plagiarizing the words of the source. Provide accurate documentation. Use the documentation format to provide in-text citations for all quotations and to list on a bibliography all these sources you quote. See Section 2 of this tutorial for more information. Plagiarism alert! Using a source's exact words without providing documentation, also plagiarism, even with the quotation marks. Though the quotation marks show that you used exact words by themselves, they do not indicate whose exact words they are. Note the examples provided. How do you paraphrase and summarize from sources correctly? Paraphrasing means you're putting a source's ideas into your own words. Paraphrase and sentence structure. A paraphrase is usually about the same length as the original source material and is typically used for relative short passages. Summarizing means that you are putting a source's ideas into your own words, phrases, and sentence structure, and keeping only the key ideas, essentially a condensed paraphrased. A summary is shorter than original passages, a few sentences instead of a whole paragraph, for example. To avoid overusing quotations, you should paraphrase or summarize most of the source material you use. Doing so allows you to borrow a source's ideas, but expressing them in your own style helps them to flow better into your project with your own ideas. Paraphrasing and summarizing your source material also tells the instructor that you actually read and understood your sources, that you put the time and effort into doing more than just copy and pasting your source material as quotations. It also shows that you have strong enough writing skills to put your source materials into your own style. As with quotations, paraphrases and summaries are most often used to support topic sentences or main points rather than dominating introductions and conclusions or being used in place of your own thesis statement and topics. Once you decide to use a paraphrase or summary, here are some keys to doing it effectively. Don't use quotation marks because you are not using the exact words of source in a paraphrase or summary. You should not use quotation marks. Using quotation marks in this case would be claiming the source said something it didn't. Be accurate. Because you are using your own style to communicate the ideas of a source accurately in paraphrasing and summarizing means that you must communicate the same meaning as the original passage. In other words, you must not change the meaning when you change the words, phrases, and sentence structure. Be thorough. A really common mistake in paraphrasing and summarizing is to change only a few words, keep some of the original word phrases, or just replace words, but keep the original sentence structure of the source. To have a thorough paraphrase, you need to use your own words, phrases, and sentence structures. In other words, you need to paraphrase the passage thoroughly in your own style. The only exception would be common words such as a, and, the, of, etc., or words that simply have no acceptable replacement, such as people's names, places, and technical terms. If you find a unique word or phrase from the original passage impossible to change, include it in your paraphrase or summary, but make sure to place just that word or phrase in quotation marks. Plagiarism alert. A paraphrase or summary that isn't thorough is a type of plagiarism. If your phrase or summary keeps some of the same word, phrases, or sentence structures as original passage without quotation marks, your reader will assume the words, phrases, or sentence are yours, not that of the original passage. In this case, you would still be plagiarizing some of the source's words. Here are some tips for paraphrasing and summarizing accurately and thoroughly. Look up unfamiliar words in the passage and read it multiple times until you thoroughly understand it. Write your paraphrase or summary without looking at the original passage. Compare your paraphrase or summary to the original passage and ask, does my paraphrase or summary mean the same as the original passage? Have I thoroughly changed the words, phrases, and sentence structure? Work with your paraphrase or summary until you get it right and you are sure it is not plagiarized. It may take several attempts. Provide documentation. Use the appropriate documentation format to provide in-text citations for all paraphrases and summaries and to list on the bibliography all sources you paraphrase or summarize. See Section 2 of this tutorial for more information. Plagiarism alert! Some students mistakenly believe that if they change the style from the original passage, that is, they paraphrase or summarize, they do not have to provide any documentation. This belief is not true, even though the words, phrases, and even sentence structures have been changed in a paraphrase or summary. The ideas are still from the source and must be documented. Think back to Section 1 of this tutorial and the discussion of what would be considered plagiarism. If you would be guilty also of plagiarism if you put someone else's ideas into your own words and presented the ideas as though they were your own. Paraphrased or summarized ideas without documentation. Plagiarism of ideas is just as serious as plagiarism of exact words. Note the examples provided. How do you provide transitions to source material? Another part of integrating source material is making sure that the combination of your own writing and your source material is stylistically effective. That is, your ideas and your source material flow smoothly together. It's also important that your reader or listener knows when you are shifting from your own work to the work of the source material. For these reasons, provide a transition to quotation phrases and summaries. In other words, begin with a phrase or sentence of your own to lead into the source material. If you don't do this, your paper, speech, or other project may be choppy, and it might be unclear where your ideas end and the source materials begin. 3 common effective methods for providing a transition to source material. A short phrase and a comma. The IVCC Student Handbook states plagiarism is defined as using the words or ideas of another's as your own, either on purpose or unintentionally. Academic integrity. As noted by the reliable source, a writer should record which of the source a concept originates from as it is discovered. University, library. A full sentence with a colon. The IVCC Student Handbook offers the following definition of plagiarism. Plagiarism is defined as using the words or ideas of another's as their own, either on purpose or unintentionally. Academic integrity. Paraphrasing your own with no punctuation. The IVCC Student Handbook strives to help students understand that plagiarism is defined as using the words or other ideas as one's own, either on purpose or unintentionally. Academic integrity. The source advises writers to record which source a concept originates from as it's discovered. University, library. Transitioning to source material in this way also helps prevent it from taking over, becoming a substitute for your own ideas, or being used as filler to take up space or meet a length requirement. Rather than dominating the source material, should supplement your own writing and voice as you integrate it correctly. Note the following examples provided. Plagiarism alert. Correctly integrating and documenting source material should always be part of doing your own work. Unfortunately, a common form of plagiarism is dishonesty, using all or part of someone else's paper or project in place of your own work. This someone might be a friend who had the same assignment, a friend or a friend of another school, a family member who writes a paper for a student, or even a complete stranger. Sometimes the other person's paper or project is from a paper mill, a website that gives away or sells previously written essays. Sometimes among the first hits in an online topic search, paper mill sites may state their papers should be used ethically and aren't meant for cheating. However, despite this disclaimer, that's exactly how they are often used. Even if you used a paper mill essay and documented it properly, it would not be considered credible, and using it would likely create suspicion of plagiarism. The best policy is to avoid paper mill sites altogether. Obviously, students who turn in someone else's work as their own are being dishonest and are guilty of plagiarism, even if the work they are submitting correctly integrates and documents its sources. This is one common sense and really something most people learn as early as preschool or kindergarten. Don't copy someone else's work. What are the key ideas and takeaways from this section? 1. Quotations use the exact words of a source within a quotation marks must be accurate, should be used sparingly, and must be documented to avoid plagiarism. Paraphrases put a source's ideas into your own words, phrases, and sentence structure. Summaries are condensed paraphrases. Both paraphrases and summaries must be accurate and thorough and must be documented to avoid plagiarism. You should provide transitions to quotations, paraphrases, and summaries so they flow smoothly with your own writing and so your reader can tell when you shift to your sources. Source material should supplement your own writing and voice, not dominate. Submitting work that you did not actually do yourself is always plagiarism. It is your responsibility to use sources responsibly and to avoid plagiarism. Be honest. Do your own work. Take your time. Use available sources like this tutorial and ask questions. You can do it. Your papers, speeches, and other projects will be stronger for doing so, and you will gain a lifelong skill that will benefit you during your education and beyond.